All right, guys, what is going on? Got another episode of the Sports Brotherhood here. Isaac and I are going to be talking a little Spurs and Rockets game 5. What's going on, man?
It's good, man. I'm just it's been a little long day, but it's a good day regardless. If you're busy, you're doing something. So, I'm ready to talk a little bit of basketball today.
Well put, well put. Yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive into that. Spurs Rockets game 5, phenomenal series so far. I know there's been a lot of talk about, the playoffs not being very competitive, not being very good. They've been some blowouts in that series, but game 5, probably the best game of the playoffs, in my opinion. Spurs got the win, 110-107, went into overtime. But I want to start off kind of talking about some of the late game woes that the Rockets had. The Spurs had just tons of opportunities to put that game away, and they just weren't able to do it. But then Houston would come back and kind of give Spurs life, and ultimately, they ended up taking advantage of that. So, as I said, 110-107, went to overtime. Manu Ginobili had that killer block on the last shot. James Harden would have potentially tied the game. I was screaming foul, foul, foul once they switched on that double team and essentially trapped him for a quick second. I wanted him to foul. They didn't foul. Manu got the game-winning swat after having probably the best game he's had all year. Maybe not so much from a points perspective, but I think it was like 12 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, something like that. Obviously the big block, but give me your thoughts on just maybe the last quarter, overtime, and just overall what you saw from Houston, maybe what you liked, and then maybe what you didn't like as well.
This game was, all these stats kind of point toward the Houston Rockets and how they should have won this game. You look at just the fact that the Rockets got up 48 3-point attempts. They shot it just as well as the Spurs did. But they also had 21 fast break points. They were better from the field. They were the same. They were better also from the free throw line. And somehow, some way, without Tony Parker, without Kawhi Leonard, they squeezed out a win. And that's also why I love the Game of Zones comparison when they bring out those cartoons and whatnot, because of the simple fact that, they have the undead who are exactly what the Spurs are, because they will not die. You have to kill them. And regardless of what's happening, no matter what extraneous circumstances may be going on the outside, circumventing the whole thing of them losing their best player or Tim Duncan no longer being there, and they get it done in your house too, which is terrifying for the Rockets to let that game go away. But we talk a little bit about toward the 7-man rotation that's going down currently with the Houston Rockets, and there's a reason for that. They had Nene, so they had an 8-man rotation, but when he goes down, Sam Decker was out for a couple months, so you throw him right into the playoff fire and trust he gets things done. You got to play with what you have. But what were some of the thoughts that you had for it?
I loved it. I'm not a James Harden fan, as you well know, but maybe those that are watching or listening don't. I don't like his game. I respect his game. I really respect his game. I think he's one of the best passers in the league. I think he's a phenomenal shot creator. I think he has unlimited range. But I hate how he plays the game of basketball. So to see him kind of struggle late, I know I just sound bitter, but I loved it. I went from hating the Spurs. The Spurs were my most hated team in the NBA for probably
a decade.
yeah. Probably from 99 to about 2009, 2010, I hated him. And then the light just clicked on, and I have the utmost respect for Popovich, not only as a coach, but just as a human being, everything he stands for. So I've kind of, I can't say I'm a fan, but I guess I'm kind of a fan of the Spurs. So I was hoping they would win. I think that the last video that we did, we had mentioned, I kind of went back and forth. At first, I said I thought the Rockets would win, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I was like, you take the ability of Popovich and what he can do as a coach as far as just scheming things. You take the ability of Kawhi Leonard, who didn't even play for all of overtime in probably most of the fourth. Did he play in the fourth, or was it just a couple minutes?
I think it was like the beginning of his rotation minutes there in the fourth.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just those two things kind of played into, I think that Houston has, obviously they have more firepower, a much more
explosive.
Yeah, they're much more explosive. I was going to say a more complete offensive scheme, but that was a bit much. Well put. They're much more explosive, but they're so reliant on that 4 out, sometimes even 5 out when they play Ryan Anderson at the 5. They're just so reliant on that, and they are so reliant. It's kind of like Oklahoma City. They're so reliant on James Harden to do everything that, I mean, when it got down to crunch time, they're essentially running ISOs. And I mean, they'll run some high pick and rolls, obviously, but I mean, San Antonio nerfed that by doing a lot of switching. And I mean, there's times LaMarcus Aldridge switched out on James Harden. He was at the top of the key. But when you're not making your move and you're just standing there dribbling the ball until there's 3, 4, 5 seconds left. Well, I just said that backwards. 6, 5, 4 seconds left. It's negating a lot of the strengths and the pressure that you're putting on the defense, because they know that you only have 4 or 5 seconds to shoot the ball. So
you go earlier.
Yeah, and I don't know. That kind of goes back to my whole James Harden thing, to where it's so predicated on 3-pointers. It's so predicated on getting to the line that it's hard to stop, because James Harden is phenomenal at getting to the basket. But I've noticed that, I mean, he's still going to get his calls, but I feel like that the refs maybe not bailing him out as much. I know there was a couple plays late to where I thought they were going to call a foul for sure, and Harden didn't get the call. So I think they're way too reliant on Harden. Obviously, the injury to Nene, as you mentioned, you mentioned the 7-man rotation. That's huge. I mean, a 7-man rotation is, most teams are going to shorten their rotation in the playoffs, but I mean, now you're forced. They put Eric Gordon in the starting lineup at he essentially plays the 3. So then you move Ryan Anderson from his natural spot of the 4. You move him as your now backup 5. So there's just a lot of maybe unmitigated consequences that Houston's facing. And then I have to give all the credit to the Spurs for being able to do that without Kawhi Leonard. Patty Mills, clutch shots. Danny Green scored the last 7 points in overtime. So really, really impressed with the Spurs. Not really a big fan of Houston and kind of what they do. It's worked for them all year, but that's why I switched my prediction, our last video, from Houston to San Antonio, is for these exact reasons. So
they had a top 10 offense of all time actually this year. But that small ball is actually Kawhi Leonard. Let's correct ourselves. Kawhi Leonard actually went out with 5 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. So he went out a little. He played a little later than we thought he did. But I mean, part of that small ball consequences, this fact that San Antonio was actually dominating them. They had 18 offensive rebounds and 19 extra chance points. Kind of the reason they were able, to hang around as long as they were able to. But there's just one of those circumstances there they didn't really take advantage of. That first one, they actually had a 2-for-1 opportunity. The score was 107-109 San Antonio. Harden passes to Gordon. He was kind of staring Danny Green down and just kind of quick passes it over to Gordon over there. He had a wide open shot, but I mean, he had Danny Green with absolutely no rim protection on the strong side with Trevor Ariza. He could have easily got to the cup and caused some problems, but I think that's kind of a mental breakdown when it comes to fatigue. You're just like, let me just go for the easy shot. My guy's wide open, instead of saying, it's all on me. I'm James Harden. If I drive hard the whole against Danny Green, they're probably going to call a foul. If not, I'm finishing with a dunk or a layup. He kind of folded mentally in that capacity. That's what I saw. And then instead of shooting that with 30 seconds left, he kicks it over to Gordon. He chucks up that shot. Whatever. But then you look at they had Gordon cough up the ball. With 13 seconds left, where Patty Mills is just takes the ball from him with 13 seconds left, and they force that jump ball, and just like things happen, and a lot of times they happen in the Spurs' favor. And part of being good and part of championships and part of going deep into the playoffs every single year is luck. And damn, they have the devil's luck because sometimes they just get it done. But what's remarkable to me is that how, with all the small ball and everything going on, LaMarcus Aldridge has not been able to take advantage of it in the post. He's currently 13 for 35, according to Synergy Sports, just in the post. So
Wow.
When you look at that investment the Spurs have kind of put into him, it's like you should be punishing these guys. I mean, this is a guy that people were saying was better than Chris Bosh, as the best power forward in the league, and this heir apparent to Tim Duncan, now taking that mantle from Tim Duncan. He's not that guy, and teams are realizing that right away, and you're entering an era where it's getting harder and harder for players or for teams to trade quality big men. I mean, you have Jonas Valanciunas. What kind of market will he really have? You need guys like Anderson. You need guys like Ibaka, guys that can shoot and play enough defense to matter, but not enough that you can get by with because they can kill you on the other end of the court while doing other things. But it's just really interesting to see that, James Harden not really go after that at home in a crucial circumstance. You got any more thoughts toward that at all, though?
I think they were there on the road, weren't they? Wasn't that at San Antonio, Game 5?
Game 5 is in Houston. Wait.
San Antonio.
You're right. You're right.
All right.
Because it goes back to Houston Game 6, and San Antonio has the better record there. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. One thing that you said that really stood out to me and is definitely a confirmation bias is you said it was kind of a mental breakdown by Harden. And the last probably 3 years with Harden, my thing on him, and I say this to Dwight Howard all the time, is I call them mental midgets. And Dwight Howard, it's hands down. Like, that's a case closed. There's no debating what he is. But with James Harden this year, I started to eat crow and say, you know what? Like, I'm wrong on him, but I always preface it with, we'll see in the playoffs. And just kind of seeing and all the things that you mentioned about kind of what he does late games, it kind of, I mean, I don't know. I don't, it's playoffs are a small sample size. I mean, 82 games for the regular season. James Harden was arguably the MVP. I would go Russ all day, but I mean, I would absolutely listen to arguments for those that wanted him as MVP. But now you get into the playoffs and you get down to crunch time and you go, I think he was 1 for 5 with 4 turnovers in late fourth quarter in overtime. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I don't know that, that type of offense really wins late in the playoffs. So
I think you're on it.
What's that?
I mean, you spoke about it in terms of how long it takes for them just to get into their offense. And, I think that's also in part because they need to have someone else handle the ball from time to time. When they have Harden, running pick and roll with the floor spread, it's dangerous. It's going to be effective regardless. But when you have Harden off ball, coming off a screen, and then transitioning right into pick and roll, there's a little bit more fluidity and movement and involvement within that offense. And with the guy coming behind Harden 5 feet and then going into a pick and roll versus, just starting in a basic offense, running a basic pick and roll. With a guy having 3 feet, 4 feet behind Harden, he has all that momentum going to the court. Going to the hole, it forces the defense to collapse so much more, and he commands so much more gravity, giving more credence to their shooters and more space. So they need to do a little bit more of that. They actually did that on the last play in which he didn't attack, and with the 30 seconds left to go, and he ended up kicking it out to Eric Gordon. They got the match they wanted. They got the no help allowed because the floor was spread so well, and they just didn't take advantage of it, or he didn't take advantage of it. But more on that here in Game 6, and it's going to be really interesting. I mean, we got to see these Celtics also get crushed tonight, so when we review that in the next pod, hopefully we'll have a couple Game 7s at least in this round.
Yeah, I hope. But one thing with the going back to the Rockets is that Nene injury is there's just so many pieces that kind of fall into that. And a lot of times it's not so much like all right, we're without Nene. You know, he played, 20, 22 minutes a game, something like that. It's not like he's some star player, but
Smart.
It's now, like I said, Ryan Anderson they moved him from the 4. Now he's going to be the backup 5. So now you're going to have Clint Capella playing a lot more minutes. And the Ryan Anderson, James Harden, not pick and roll, but pick and pop. I think that might be probably their best one. And when you have Capella in there and you can just go under that pick and roll and not have to worry about, Capella really doing anything. So, I mean, you can ice it, go under it. And then, I mean, you're not going to stop it, but I feel like the Spurs did a really good job of that. And again, that goes back to what we've been saying this whole pod is they don't run too many sets. And I don't want to go overboard and act like, oh, NBA teams run plays every time. No, they don't run plays every time down. I mean, the Warriors are,
open gym.
Yeah, exactly. They just run and gun, have fun, freestyle, space the floor. But I just feel like there's more purpose. And with the Houston offense, again, I sound like a broken record, but it's just
not as
there needs to be more. Yeah, there needs to be more. And if my belief is correct, which it is to me, but we'll see. If James Harden is a mental midget in the playoffs, I mean, is your best chance of success really going to be just simply running high screen rolls for him 80% of the time down the floor? And it's just, I don't know. So I was, like I said, I was kind of, I don't want to say pleased because that just makes me sound like a hater, but I was pleased. I was pleased with how that game ended. Danny Green, like I said, came up huge. Missed that late free throw though, but it ended up not mattering. And then as you touched on, just the lack of, I don't want to say aggression, but like I said, that the pass to Gordon and then the turnovers that Harden had, it's just, it leaves you wanting a lot more, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, all that stuff works in the regular season, but it's just a different animal in the playoffs.
Hey, speaking of mental midgets, shout out to Dwight Howard. I actually was on Facebook and they had this, they were advertising this thing called Stranger Twins or twinstrangers.com, in which you upload one of your photos and it connects you to someone across the world who looks exactly like you. So, I mean, I've been Dwight Howard's doppelganger for a good 10 years now, at least that I've gotten toward my way. So, I mean, shout out to strangertwins.com. But twinstrangers.com, and it's something that I really want to check out though. My sister was actually throwing some interest toward it. She was like, I really want to check it out. I was like, shut up, you're just gonna get me anyway because we look just alike. So it was really cool to mess around with that. But did you check out Mr. D'Antoni with no mustache? I mean, if you had to guess how old D'Antoni is, how old did you guess he is?
D'Antoni. Am I just going off of appearance, or am I going based on my history, context, clues, and all that stuff?
Just try to whatever. However you
if
can.
I had to go appearance, I would say 55. If I had to go based on his history and all that I know, I'll say 61.
65.
Ah, all right. I was hoping I was getting a little close. 65, huh? He looks good.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we're getting old here, man. We're not spring chickens anymore. Now there's one of those flashback. Remember when Michael Finley would dunk on somebody once a year?
Oh yeah.
As an old man, and ironically, as a Spur, I should say, coincidentally, as a Spur, he would do that, and he just out of nowhere just dunk on someone. You're like, what the? And it's awesome to never do that too. I mean, he's had that moment on Chris Bosh before. And then he had another one of those last night too. When was it with the right hand too?
Yeah, offhand. It was the wrong foot with the right hand. So yeah, that was.
Man, it just shows, man. Those, I mean, 39, right?
Yep.
And people just forget that guy was a top 8 player in the world at one time, and it's awesome to see him still doing things like that.
I mentioned earlier how I used to hate the Spurs. Manu Ginobili was the main reason that I hated the Spurs. Like, I don't like Euro steps. I don't like flopping, and he did all of that. But I have come around to respect his game. I loved what he did last night. Like I said, obviously that block was huge.
I
He had that. He had that late. He had that. What was it like? That floater that he had late in the game with like under a minute left in the fourth. That one was big. I think that tied it up. But yeah, that was a great game by him. So what are you thinking here for the last 2 games? So we got 3-2 Spurs. What are you calling?
Man, I said Rockets in 7 before the series started. I'm gonna have to stick with it. Probably
fair.
because Kawhi is probably not gonna play next game. So I mean, you got to factor that in.
He said he's going to,
he said he's going to.
but that's him. I mean, we don't know.
I mean, Pop might say, sit your ass down, but
Yep.
And he'll happily play 12 people just because, and still somehow almost win the game. Fucking around. But I mean, just sitting there, just resting, just waiting for whoever the hell comes out of this fight and this struggle of man versus man, and it's gonna be ugly.
They legit might sweep. Like, they legit might sweep. If you would have said that back 3 weeks ago, like, yeah, the Warriors are going to sweep the Western Conference Finals, you'd be like, please, Houston and San Antonio? No way. But, man. Like,
I mean, you look at the fact that they're playing 7 guys. I mean, if they do survive, which kind of harkens me back to when the Clippers actually, beat them in the first round in terms of with San Antonio. They had that short leash, and they took all they have. It took 7 games. That awesome shot by Chris Paul off the glass over Tim Duncan. And they came out of that series, and strangely enough, they went up against Houston, and they didn't have anything left when they were up 3-1 to really fight and push to that series. And thinking about them, if they happen to beat San Antonio with their 7-man lineup, they are going to get absolutely destroyed by Golden State. And it's one of those awesome things that you have to give Golden State credit, because the fact that they draft so well, and these players, they develop them throughout the year, allowing them to get rotation minutes throughout the year. So even now they're contributing. So remember we had Lorenzo kind of, not giving credit or not giving, any credence to first round draft picks and saying, the Clippers, it's okay that they gave away those picks.
Oh yeah.
And then we looked over at Golden State and how they have, Pat McCall contributing. They have Ian Clark contributing. Just who the Clippers would kill for right now.
And the Clippers could have had McCaw. They could have had Malcolm Brogdon. They could have had, all these other players that were second-round picks. And, yeah, Clippers just are not good at managing a team.
Well, that's why it's really tough to have a general manager who is also your coach. I mean, how much time – are they really going to go to Bosnia in the summertime to look at a young 17-year-old kid playing? I mean, does Doc Rivers have time for that? I mean, if you tell him that it's a 10-year-old Bosnian a veteran, he might take a peek. But
they have a GM. He's the president of basketball operations. They have a GM. I can't remember who the hell he is, but I totally get what you're saying. I agree. But, they can send him out and do all that stuff. Doc just has kind of like the final say. But I totally agree. Totally agree. If he's the name, he's the one that's really running the show, and if he's doing the coaching too, I totally got you.
It's just a handful of guys that can do that, and even Popovich has R.C. Buford. I mean, unless we're talking football with Bill Belichick, they need to revamp their entire scouting department and really realize its true value in today's modern NBA. Especially
with the salary cap and the contracts, you're going to need that cheap labor. You can't just be throwing around $25, $30 million contracts.
Labor.
What?
If you're any good, you need those picks.
Yep, 100%.
Even more so than the worst teams too. Because they can still sign people by accident.
Yep. All right, so you're saying Rockets in 7, sticking with the original prediction. I respect that. I'm gonna say, I can't remember what I said the last one. I know first I said Rockets, and then I changed it to Spurs, and I can't remember if I said 6 or 7.
Stop flipping and flopping. You might be okay.
I know, right? No, to be fair, I didn't flop when the series was going. I flopped like beforehand. I was like, yeah, I think the Rockets are gonna win, and then I thought about it. I'm like, no, we're going Spurs. So it was before the series.
Last you flopped.
Wait, what?
Your last pod, you flopped. I mean,
Oh,
if you
yeah,
were
yeah,
a
yeah.
Pokemon, you'd.
But no, it was before the series had started, so it wasn't like oh well I saw him play and now I want to. So I'll say Spurs in home court. I'll go Spurs in 7. Spurs in
All
7.
right,
So.
better. I'm gonna stick with Rockets in 7.
All right, I like it. We'll have to make like a friendly wager or something on Game 7 if it goes to Game 7. So. All right. Well, say we wrap this one up, but we'll definitely have to do another one here. We always say that, and then it goes like a week or 2 or 3, and we end up not doing it. But
we only went like a week.
Time is precious. Time is precious. I know we're both pretty busy, but we should be. Like I said, I'm going to be getting a bunch of software to kind of really get the gears turning on this, the production quality, get that turning. So those that are subscribing, watching, whatever. Hopefully we'll be able to be putting out a much better product here in the near future. So
sounds good.
That'll be exciting. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Later.